alaikum sisters and welcome to Step Up, the show for the 21st century Muslimah.
In this series, we are looking at issues that affect us as teenagers and how Islam is applicable for us, inshallah.
I'm Hafsa.
And I'm Ruqayya, and we have a jam-packed show for you today.
So what's on the show?
Well, we start off with Ask Big Sister, where Big Sister Hanan will be on the hot seat answering our questions about whether celebrity culture really affects us. Are we really drawn in by their lifestyle and habits? It's sure to be an interesting discussion.
We then speak to Sultana Parvin about her spoken word poetry and Stand Out. Next, in Step Back, we learn more about Asma bin Abu Bakr. Then in our upcoming talent segment, we speak to Arfa Farouk and her passion for event management. So don't go anywhere.
Today on Ask Big Sister, we discuss the impact of celebrity culture. And with me today, I have Hafsa, who's 16 and doing her A-levels.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. We have Hannah, who's 14 and doing her GCSEs.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. And we have Sister Salma, who is 16 and doing her GCSEs.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. So girls, before we delve into the topic of celebrity culture and the impact of celebrity culture, I think it's important that we actually define what you guys think is a celebrity, what makes a celebrity, and what is celebrity culture to you guys.
Okay, well, I think a celebrity is just someone who is quite well known in general and can have a big impact. And that can be Barack Obama, because he's like, you know, the president. Or it could be like Mufti Menk, because so many people go to him for advice on Muslim matters.
Yeah, I think celebrity culture is when people choose so-called celebrities, who are basically people who are famous just for the sake of being famous, as role models. And I also think that this has become increasingly common due to modern technology constantly bombarding us with their lives 24/7.
I think with that, it's important to remember, especially in this discussion, that they can have quite a positive impact, but they can also have a negative impact as well.
That's true. And as we can see from the last 30 seconds, there's a whole array of different opinions on what you think a celebrity is and what celebrity culture means to you, which links in nicely with what today's episode is all about. So the impact of celebrity culture. And as we can see, the attraction to a life of fame, freedom and luxury is desired, or a concept that seems quite exciting for most of us. And living in an environment where we're constantly being bombarded by a culture of celebrity and obsession with fame means that as a young Muslim woman, growing and learning our purpose in life is made a little bit harder. The impact of music and celebrity culture can lead people to idolize celebrities or substitute non-Islamic practices into their daily lives. So joining us in our discussion, we have Sister Hanan, who's on the Ask Big Sister hot seat today. So Sister, please join us.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters.
Alaikum assalam.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Yep, good. Alhamdulillah. It's really good to be here. I'm a university student. I'm studying economics, and it's really nice to, alhamdulillah, be back on the show. I've been here before, but it looks like we've got a really good discussion today.
So tell us a bit about what you're doing as a student. What interests you?
Well, yes, I am studying economics, but something that's particularly interested me for the past sort of 5 or 6 years has been sort of just Muslim communities, especially in the West, and how they've developed in the West. You know, we've had, my grandparents or parents' generation coming over from, abroad to America, the United States, to Europe, to Australia, and seeing about how Muslim communities have evolved and developed there. That's something, inshallah, I'm looking at studying a bit more
really
at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so Hanan, what is Islam's view on celebrity and celebrity culture in general?
It's a deep question, Salma, but I think I'd almost change it a little bit. I'd say it's not so much about, what does Islam say about celebrity culture, but rather what does Islam say about our lives? We know, and we've discussed previously on the show, that the purpose of our life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that Islam has sent the Quran as guidance for us and to follow the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We know that this life is a test, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that we do. And at the same time, we know that this life is temporary, and the real joys and the real fun that we aspire to is in the hereafter. So when you accept that, it's then that you realise that the objective for celebrities is not the same as the objective that a Muslim has in this life. Celebrities, they don't necessarily believe in an afterlife, so they want to have their fun and their fame and their fortune now. Another thing then, when you look a little bit deeper, is that you see that a lot, if not practically everything that celebrities engage in contradicts an aspect of Islam. So we can't be aspiring to be the same as someone when, you know, their actions are what we view to be incorrect. You know, and it's not just that we view to be incorrect, but that it's actually bad for us.
Yeah.
You know, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't prevent something that was good for us. So even if it may seem nice on the outside, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's truly beneficial for us. And we see that anyway, you know, in life today, where the suicide rate, you know, the drug use of celebrities, you know, divorce rates, family breakdown, you know, celebrities are, you know, they've got so many problems. So clearly their fame, their fortune hasn't actually brought them the happiness that they seek.
Yeah.
And, you know, another thing, a hadith that I always like to remember is when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, you know, on the day of judgment, you will be raised with those who you love, you know. And we can't necessarily say, given that celebrities are doing things which aren't in accordance with Islam, that they will be in a very good place.
Yeah.
So as Muslims, we want to be in a good place. We want to be raised with those who also love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we want to follow those who also, you know, are acting in accordance with Islam.
So it's about making sure that we remember that we have a better purpose and a higher purpose in life.
Absolutely.
So following on to that, what do you think is some advice that you could give to us about how we can avoid the celebrity culture in Islam?
I think that once you accept that you are not judging yourself by the same standards as other celebrities, then you will automatically kind of want to disassociate yourself from it. You know, there's some things that obviously, you know, you're growing up, you know, especially in the West, you know, we've got all this technology, you're going to know some things about them, you know, you're going to come across it in daily life. But you don't need to go out of your way to find out information about them. You know, you don't need to subscribe to their updates, you don't need to go to events where they're in attendance, you don't need to try and imitate them in all of the things that they do. Because, like you said, you know, we're aspiring for a better life than what they have in this life and in the akhirah, because inshallah, you know, we've just been talking about how these lives don't necessarily bring us contentment. So I think it's about, definitely, you know, dissociating yourself and attaching yourself to what is better then. You know, the only way that you can truly feel attached to someone when you love them is when you really know them, isn't it? And so the same goes in one way for celebrities, where don't know so much about them and then you won't feel so pressured to imitate them. And on the reverse, you know, try and increase your knowledge of the people who you would like to, you know, embody and copy. And, you know, inshallah, you'll be more like them.
Yeah, it's like having, you know, like that knowledge about Islam. It all comes down to learning as much as you can about Islam, and then you'll find, like, absent-mindedly you're taking people like the Sahaba and the Prophets and, you know, people like that as role models without even meaning to, and, you know, taking their lives as an example instead of maybe a 21st century celebrity's life.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Exactly. And I think when you're talking about embodying a role model or someone you want to aspire to be like, I guess when it comes to it as young Muslim women, do we need role models? Do we need to look to someone to be like? Do we need to aspire to be like someone in terms of their characteristics? And if so, what kind of characteristics are we looking for?
Well, I think it's human nature, isn't it, that you always want an example, you know, in your life to kind of, you know, copy and live up to. And, you know, that's how we learn as human beings, you know, even in school. That's why you need examples, whether that's, you know, 30 trigonometry questions in maths or, you know, and
the worst.
You know, or a mock essay question. You need that kind of, you know, someone to just show you, you know, how to do things. So it's perfectly natural to want a role model. But then as Muslims, we should, again, be coming back to our basis and thinking, okay, what sort of role model then are we looking for? We're going to want to look for somebody who embodies the qualities that we know are right from Islam. So truthfulness, you know, kindness, you know, giving charity, someone who stands up for justice, you know, who's not afraid to, you know, stand up for the truth and, you know, correct a situation where they see a wrong being committed. We should look for all of these qualities and, you know, the numerous other ones that, you know, we know are, you know, enshrined in the prophetic tradition, in people we see around us or people that we know of, to, inshallah, you know, take them as role models.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think just putting celebrity culture aside for a second, it's really important to have a role model and to have someone to look up to. So who can we look up to as role models for the youth, past and present?
Well, I think I'd go back to, again, a saying of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this instance, where he said, the best of people is my generation, then those who come after them, and then those who come after them. So he's pretty much answered your question, Hannah, you know, in saying that it's his companions, it's the Sahaba that are the real people that we need to look to. You know, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is calling them the best generation, you know, for all of the generations, subhanAllah, that this earth has seen. That's a very, very big statement, you know. And these were people who sacrificed their lives for Islam. You know, they went through so many trials and difficulties, but at the same time, you know, they were human beings and they had the same desires and the same, you know, happinesses and sorrows that we do. So there's so many examples, real life examples that we can take from their lives. And on top of that, you know, we can look to as well the prophets, you know, the previous prophets before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically put all of their stories in the Quran for us to take lessons and inspiration from. And then, of course, though, you know, perhaps there's some things you feel, well, I need an example kind of like right in front of me, you know, 21st century problems, whilst obviously the essence of a lot of these problems, you can find the lessons, you know, from previous generations. And want something a bit more real, then, you know, we should, as we were just saying, you know, look to people who embody, you know, Islamic qualities, you know, and at the same time look to people around us. You know, we've got, whether they be friends or sisters or our mothers, subhanAllah, you know, I think all of us would probably say here that, you know, our mothers are amazing, amazing people and probably one of our role models, mashallah. Who are you guys as role models? Go on. Anyone care to share?
I have to say my mum. I'm just going to repeat that because, subhanAllah, her strength is inspiring, and her iman and the fact that she wakes up every morning to pray salah. You know, I just see her and I'm just like, oh, I should be doing that too. And I actually get up and pray salah as well. And it's just like, you know, to have someone who's there following the religion, you know, through all of the hardships that she goes through, subhanAllah, her iman is still steadfast, alhamdulillah. She's just, she's a beautiful woman, alhamdulillah.
I think a great role model to have is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because, you know, if you look at celebrities' lives right now, we only see what they want us to see. We don't necessarily see, you know, like the real them. We see we see the cover story that's been created for them. We don't see all their problems, you know, the things that are going wrong in their lives all the time. And I think that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well, I know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, his life was real. He didn't have an agent running around him constantly planning his life for him. You're like, no, you're not going to say this, you're going to say that instead. And you're not going to reveal this, you're going to reveal that instead. You know, everything about him was so human. And I think that's just how we can relate to him, because he was, you know, he was a person, he was a human being just like us. And, you know, the fact that he was able to live his life like he did means that, inshallah, we can try and live our life like he did as well, because there's nothing fake about his life. It's all real. The struggles, you know, the joy, the sorrow, the hardships, everything about it is so real. And that's why it can be so important to us, and that's why he can be such a good role model, inshallah, to, you know, to learn from.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think Muslim women as well in Islam, the women that were promised paradise, incredible women, and I mean, amazing. When we're talking about past and present, I think that these women in themselves and the struggles they went through, Islam is applicable at all ages, all different times. It's incredible that these women are remembered till this day for the amazing things they did for the sake of Islam. They built the foundations of everything. You know, they spread Islam in a beautiful way. You know, they're my role models.
I think for me, just like Hafsa, I go back down to family. Like, one of my role models is my sister, because she's got so much iman. She's such a good Muslimah, mashallah. But she's also really active in the things that she believes in, and she gets her voice out there. She makes sure she's heard. But I think she manages to do this even with all the negative impacts from celebrity culture and celebrities. So I was wondering, are there any positive impacts that we can have from celebrities?
Well, you know, there's good and bad in everybody. None of us are going to sit here and point the finger and say, you know, this is an all bad person, there's nothing good in them. You know, and celebrities are no different. You know, we hear of a lot of celebrities, you know, they give a lot of money to charity. You know, a lot of them, they work with refugees. You know, they spend a lot of time and they place a lot of importance on family life. But at the same time, we look at Islam and we see that Islam also promotes all of these things. And better yet, when we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is something He's encouraged us to do, and not to imitate, you know, XYZ celebrity, that's when inshallah we'll reap the reward from it. And at the same time, you know, there's a slightly, sometimes, you know, different way that Islam encourages us to do things. So take the example of charity. A celebrity might come out and say, yes, you know, I've just donated £2 million to, you know, people in, you know, this country who are suffering as a result of a natural disaster. But from Islam, we know that when you give charity, it should be, you know, so secret, so, like, you know, not glorified, and nobody knows that, you know, your left hand shouldn't know from your right hand, you know. So by doing it from Islam, then inshallah, you know, we know that it's a better thing for us, you know, keeps us sincere, and inshallah we'll get the reward for it.
Inshallah.
inshallah.
So since we've touched on the positive, what do you think is the largest and most dangerous impact of celebrity culture, and how do you think as Muslims we can combat it?
That's a very, very big question, isn't it? I mean, I feel that it would be, you know, the way that we just become accustomed to having this pressure of, you know, conforming to a certain, you know, line and trying to be like a certain celebrity. I think that is where the problem lies, in that we don't want to inadvertently start taking our lifestyle, you know, our values and our actions from people who were just, you know, famous in society and spoken of a lot. You know, many people, they can try and make excuses and they can say, no, you know, I know what Islam says and I know what celebrities do, so I'm not going to take any of the, you know, harmful impact. I can see what that is and I'm not going to let that affect me. Yeah. But, you know, subconsciously, when we, you know, it's the same thing as happens with friends, really, isn't it? You know, Islam places huge importance on keeping good company because our friends affect us a lot. And at the same time, if you're continually watching videos of XYZ person, hearing about their interests, their likes, dislikes, you know, their opinions on various matters, you're going to also start taking that on board. And I think that, I would say, that is one of the biggest danger that I would see from celebrity culture. But what would you guys think as young people? What do you see being the most harmful impact on other young women?
I think an impact that I've seen quite recently, actually, it's quite sad to see, I think, is the reaction some people have in the comments of celebrity pictures. Think of any celebrity, click on one of their photos, and you'll see the reaction in the comments. And I think in an Islamic perspective as well, how do you think that we should be on social media etiquette, and how we should react to this kind of celebrity culture that everyone's muddled in?
It's a big, almost separate discussion in itself, but just to touch on it briefly, I think, you know, you're right. You see that a lot of people, they say things on social media that they wouldn't really ever say in real life. And especially in relation to celebrity culture, it can result in you losing some of your haya sometimes, just in the way, you know, if completely, you know, like you're just so obsessed with a specific celebrity, you'll say things that, you know, as Muslim women wouldn't really necessarily be appropriate to say. So I think it's always making sure that, you know, whatever we type in this case, you know, is in accordance with Islam, and it's something that, you know, we could say in front of, I mean, something I always try and check myself with is, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were here, would I still be doing this thing? Yeah. And I think that's always, you know, I mean, subhanAllah, Allah's watching us all the time, so that's the biggest reminder. But sometimes even just thinking, you know, if he was sitting right here, what would his opinion be? So that's something. And we
often forget that everything we type is equal as something you're saying, and we will be asked about that on Judgment Day.
Definitely, I think just because it's behind a screen doesn't mean it's not real, doesn't mean that the words, you know, aren't still there.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a scary thought, actually. And on the topic of Muslim celebrity culture, there's been a massive increase in hijabi blogging and vlogging, and we've all got the hijabi role model that we follow on Instagram, for example, and they do have a massive following from people in our age range. So, you know, the question I want to ask is, do you think that these people provide the alternative, and should we have an alternative?
No, I definitely, you know, I think you're right, Khadija, in that, you know, there is an alternative Muslim celebrity culture being presented, not just with, you know, obviously I think hijabi vloggers and bloggers, they're kind of a subset of that, but, you know, even just general Islamic personalities now, I think, again, social media has a big part to play in that. So, yeah, do we need it? Should we encourage it? Essentially, I don't believe with Muslims, we don't need a celebrity culture, you know. In Islam, we don't idolize people. We respect them, you know, and especially, you know, if people are, you know, people of knowledge or they know something, we should respect everybody. But ultimately, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who's worthy of status. And we are all going to be raised on the Day of Judgment as equals and be judged before Him. So it's not for any of us to place anybody on a pedestal and, you know, like, there's a fine line, isn't it? There's a difference between having a role model and wanting to aspire to be like someone in one area, and then idolizing someone and making them a celebrity and thinking, oh my gosh, they're so amazing in all of these aspects of their life and I want to, you know, be like them. You know, it's with every person, you know, you take the good and the good from where you see it and you leave what's bad, and you appreciate the quality more than you appreciate the person. You know, if someone's truthful, you don't just love off that person, you appreciate the fact that, mashallah, they're truthful, I'm going to try and be truthful like that. And specifically when it comes down to some of these hijabi vloggers, like you're saying, I mean, I'm sure we all have an opinion on that, but a lot of them, we can say, don't necessarily represent Islam or, you know, how we should behave according to Islam. So again, we need to be careful about what we take from them, and you know, if we should always as well be a bit hesitant to kind of, you know, push ourselves out there where we may be celebritized or be presented as role models for somebody, because, you know, we all know our faults, and we should, you know, always make sure people don't, you know, respect you to the extent that they would idolize you, you know, in that sense.
And also, you touched on this, but it's important to remember that their qualities are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's about going back to Him and, you know, appreciating that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think we forget as well that they have a massive responsibility. Anyone taking anything, for example, bad, not bad particularly, but something that's not that great or doesn't represent Islam in the best way possible, they have a massive responsibility, and we often forget that. So when we aspire to be like them, we forget the incredible responsibility that comes with it.
No, definitely.
But
I mean, it comes as well down, just to end on, I think, inshallah, you know, the concept of sadaqah jariyah, where, you know, if you teach someone something, inshallah, all the benefit that they get from that, something from Islam, you know, you will also get the reward for that. It's the same thing when we, you know, encourage someone to do something wrong, or someone takes something wrong from us, you know, we will also, like you're saying, be responsible for that. So it's always something to bear in mind, inshallah.
It is. So Jazakallah khairan, sisters. That was a really awesome discussion. And it's clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us with the best and most perfect way of life. So there's really no need to follow any other way. As young Muslim women, we should be critical of the example set by celebrities around us and constantly question what we're being fed and told to believe in. Break away from blind imitation, and let's start thinking about setting our own trends and models based on the correct Islamic way. We're off to a break now, but we want to hear from you. So please do tweet us to let us know your thoughts on our discussion. That's @IslamChannel, #StepUp. See you in 3.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Step Up, the show to enable the young Muslimah to step up in her deen.
The religion of Islam is based on eloquent and articulate speech. From the concise yet comprehensive words of the Prophet ﷺ, as well as his companions, to the remarkable verses of the Quran. These verses challenged every form of literature at the time, poetry more than anything. Throughout history, poets have incorporated social, political, and religious issues into their work, a tradition that continues even today. Today I'm meeting Sister Sultana, who is a spoken word artist. I'm hoping she can really help me understand the impact of this form of literature. So there seems to be varying definitions of what spoken word actually is. You know, some people say it's just performing poetry, other people say it's merging between poetry and rap. What's your take on it?
I think the best way to explain it is a type of literary expression, much like all the other types of literary expression. And I think that for different people it means different things, but generally speaking, I think spoken word is probably it draws on all the kind of aspects of poetry, but what it tries to do is incorporate them in such a way that is current, which flows, which draws on rhythm and beat. So I understand the analogy to rap. And it also, in many respects, draws on prose, which I think is unheard of. It's not similar to poetry in that regard. So I think that's why spoken word has taken off.
So what about in terms of your personal journey? When did you first realise that you had a passion for it?
I have a passion really for words, and I think that's from when I was very, very young. I'd say probably when I was about 5 or 6. So because of that, I kind of took a real interest in books and words and the English language, and because of that, I think what's happened is as time's gone on, I find that the literary expression is so crucial in the heart of any kind of culture, and for any group of people, for them to find an expression which represents them, whoever they may be, women, people of colour, you know, whoever it might be, young people, it's so crucial because it's at the hub, it's at the heart of what a community can potentially be. So for me, I realised that because of my passion for words, my passion for literature, my passion for language, it just seemed to be a very normal, kind of seamless almost area to go into. And alhamdulillah, you know, I've had the opportunity to write stuff, perform it, and you know, alhamdulillah, it's been received really well, so I've just carried on. If the Ummah could speak, what would she say? Allah created me out of His love, a promise, a love for humanity to be the last and final witness. I am the testimony to my sisters who came before me. So here I am. This is my destiny.
So would you say that spoken word is for everyone? Do you think anyone can do it?
I think if people want to have a go at spoken word, I think it's a really good form of expression, and I would definitely say that if you feel you have a talent in terms of literary expression, in terms of word, in terms of language, and you really want to have a go at it, then definitely have a go at it. Up and until you try, you'll never know. And I think with most things, you know, not everybody necessarily is into that, but what I've generally found is there's so many young talented people out there, and I think that they should be given the opportunity to, you know, have a platform and speak. But first of all, they need to have the confidence to kind of take it upon themselves to kind of have a go.
Yeah. So it definitely starts from there. It starts
Absolutely.
from, you know, internalise it and believing that you actually can do it.
Absolutely.
And if you have the interest to just go ahead and pursue it.
Go for it.
Excellent.
So we can just pretend that we're. What do I remember? In my early days, I was cherished, nurtured and safe at the hands of my fathers and mothers who made the best of who I could be. And I was graced with him, my beloved. I belonged to him and he took full responsibility for me, for everything I needed. He prayed for me endlessly, showed me his mercy as only he could show me. He held me up when I found it hard to stand. When I stumbled and shook or felt frightened, he showed me exactly how to be the best of me. Until I made him proud of me, made him smile my way. So I smiled in return.
Of course, speaking about literature, it's really cool that we just came across this, you know, bookshop on a boat.
Absolutely, it's wonderful.
Thought?
It's
Very
absolutely
creative.
wonderful. Yes.
Loving it, absolutely loving it, alhamdulillah. So I wanted to ask about, you know, the industry and how you think young girls, how you think it is for young girls. Would you say that it's harder for them to become spoken word artists as opposed to young boys?
I think probably there are some advantages if you're a male. I think that there are probably more opportunities. I think that maybe it's a little bit easier to kind of, in terms of flexibility and opportunities to kind of go places and do things, which may not necessarily be afforded to young girls. However, I think there is a growing trend amongst Muslim women where they are, alhamdulillah, coming out more with regards to writing, expression, all of those kind of fields. And so does it look positive for young girls? I'd say absolutely it looks really positive. I think that there's a drive now to let our younger girls kind of really find themselves in terms of literary expression. You know, we're sometimes unfortunately from communities where the kind of age-old traditional kind of things about the way that you express yourself, you know, go into particular fields, don't expand your, you know, horizons with regards to that. But this is a way that you can do all of those things. You can kind of pursue your, you know, educational fields, but in your spare time you could pursue this and really pursue it. And so for young girls, I think this is an excellent way, actually maybe more than young boys, of a way for them to express themselves in a way which is positive, which is enriching, and also it's kind of, it brings together lots of different types of people, and I think that that is something positive for young girls. But this didn't stop his prayers for me. He knew better than I could ever of a time to come, and he was scared. And so he continued to pray for me and caress the very core of my heart with his strength. I think that the most poignant thing is that we come from a deen which is, a lot of it is oral, the tradition is oral. Yeah. So does it fit right into that tradition? It's at the centre of that tradition. So it's really crucial that we are following in the footsteps of something that even the, you know, the scholars of the past, the poets of the past did. And so it's always, for Muslims, it's more relevant than ever that they follow in those kind of footsteps and they keep that tradition alive. Your beauty which lays behind a veil that robes your body, which seeks to dignify your very soul. A veil you chose with choices they claim you did not make, with an intellect they claim you do not possess. It means little. Why? Because, my sister, indeed you are a queen. You are. You are everything you may not feel you can be. But I tell you from deep inside, my sister, you are.
So what tips or advice would you give for up-and-coming spoken word artists?
I think I'd give two pieces of advice. The first is believe in yourself, and the second is write. Write everything down, write what you're feeling, any ideas that you have, because if you start that process off, then it gives you the opportunity to at some point verbalize those words. And that really is the beginning.
Yeah.
And if you start at that place, that is the best place to start.
Absolutely, it's really important to just kind of go for it and just
Absolutely,
start the
yeah,
process.
absolutely.
So there you have it. What may seem like a few rhyming sentences is actually a lot more powerful than we might perceive. Spoken word is a brilliant way to express our opinions and even to convey our deen. All we need is passion, paper, and the belief that if anyone can do it, then so can we.
Asma bint Abi Bakr, what a woman. She was a woman of great nobility, wisdom and patience. She was the 18th to embrace Islam in Mecca at the age of 14. And being the daughter of the great companion Abu Bakr, she was brought up in an atmosphere of love, purity and devotion. Asma was around 25 years old when the Prophet ﷺ was given the command to migrate from Mecca to Medina. The plan was for Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ to travel in the opposite direction of Medina and wait in a cave named Thawr in order to lose anybody who might be tracking them. The only problem was that they would need someone to keep them in touch with what was going on in Mecca and someone to bring them the essentials like food and water. This immense responsibility was handed to Asma bint Abi Bakr and her brother Abdullah. Imagine that. Asma carried out these grueling tasks all as she was heavily pregnant. But with Allah's will and her determination, she was able to do them. The last day in which the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr were to stay in the cave, Asma prepared the food container and water skin. The problem, she had no rope to tie them closed, so she tore her waist belt and used half of it to tie up the food and water. And when the Prophet ﷺ saw what she did, he smiled and said to her, "Indeed, Allah has given you exchange for this girdle or waist belt 2 girdles in paradise." And this is the story of how she came to be known as the Lady of 2 Belts. This also came to be the moment she was promised paradise by the Prophet ﷺ. Asma's bravery and resilience does not stop there. Abu Jahl had to be one of the most despicable human beings at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He furiously knocked on the Abu Bakr household door and Asma opened. He asked her where their whereabouts were. She confidently replied that she did not know. He then went on to slap Asma so hard some say her earrings tore off. She simply repeated that she did not know where they were and that he could hit her as hard as he wanted, her reply would be the same. Her bravery and patience in this situation is a lesson we can all take and learn from today. Islam was built at the hands of some of the most hard-working, persistent and determined young women that have ever walked this earth. They've shown bravery in the face of injustice and they've excelled and exceeded at every task given to them. Asma built the foundations of her incredible legacy from the age of 14. So when will we start building ours?
See you after the break. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Arfa Farouk. I head up the marketing at Makers Academy, a 12-week coding bootcamp. I basically head up the marketing now at Makers Academy, which is a coding bootcamp. So a coding bootcamp is basically a place where you come to learn to code in literally 3 months. So our students come from all kinds of backgrounds. We've had everything from cab drivers to people who did art degrees. But the one thing they have in common is a passion to code. And by the end of it, they basically are trained developers and we put them in jobs. My role in all of this is to make sure the students know about that we exist. So I do everything, you know, the usual Google, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of advertising. But then I also get to do a lot of more creative advertising, creating video content, writing blogs, case studies, podcast advertising. I get to have a lot of fun, just kind of trying out new things to try and attract the attention of our customers. My journey so far has definitely not been ordinary. It's there's a saying that my career has not been like a ladder, like a career ladder. It's been like a jungle gym. This is somebody called Sarah Sandberg who works at Facebook who uses this quote, which I think pretty much describes my journey so far. Like most people, when I was kind of in school and college, I was kind of like not sure what to do, you know. Like most people, I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher, maybe I'll be a doctor, maybe I'll be a lawyer. Kind of went through it all really. But I came to, obviously, when I was in sixth form, you know, you've got to pick university options. And I'm like, cool, what do I do now? I was mostly studying media communication. Towards the final year of my uni, I came across this program for young people. It's a very new charity, and what they were doing was creating these. It was like a coaching kind of mentoring thing, but it was all delivered online, called Spark and Mentor. So I applied for it and got to be one of the, I think it was the first 12 people on this charity program. And that was great because every week I would hang out with my agent, as we called it, and the agent's job was to kind of connect you up to different people in the industry, etc. And she was really good at kind of, you know, telling me that I'm really good at, say, building positive relationships, or, you know, I have spark and I'm actually quite resilient. And it was her, Eugenie, who I really look up to. She was just like, you know what, you're really good at this social media thing. Have you ever thought about going down this as a career path? It's just like, what? You can actually have a job tweeting and stuff? Like, I've always been like a digital native, grew up pretty much from the internet, MSN days and everything. So it was quite eye-opening for me to realise actually there is a career and a job to be had. So I applied to my first internship. Then there was also an opportunity that came around where there was a TEDx event being held in Newham where I live, and it was about resilience. And that year for me was all about resilience. I loved TEDx and I was like, this would be a pretty cool thing to do. So I kind of just emailed the lady, asked to meet, and I just said, look, this has kind of been my journey so far. And I kind of want to do a TEDx talk about how when you are down in the dumps, it's about finding that one thing that can pull you through. So I kind of got an opportunity that year to also do a TEDx talk, which was pretty cool. Over the last 2 years, I've met so many awesome people, like, you know, 18-year-olds, like 60-year-olds who decided that they wanted to go into tech, and, you know, they've decided to pretty much put their life on hold for 3 months, dedicate themselves here for 3 months, put everything into it, and then they go on to just get these amazing jobs in tech. And it's really humbling for me to know that my little advert or whatever it was that I did got them there, you know, and kind of I played a part in their role. I work with a lot of talented people. The students that I've kind of seen graduate, go on and get amazing jobs are just amazing, and that's the biggest kind of perk of my job that kind of keeps me here and keeps me going. When it comes to tech, I read a book by Sheryl Sandberg, who's basically the Facebook coup, and it was called Lean In, which is all about how women should kind of put themselves forward. But what was really interesting about that book was it was a lot about white middle class women, and sometimes I think that's the issue as well, because you know, pushing kind of women, the women agenda and getting more women to tech, etc., is definitely, like, that's really important. But what it is women from certain backgrounds will have slightly different barriers, etc. And my biggest struggle is just the fact that I've never been able to find a role model that's similar to me, you know, who looks like me, who maybe had the same background as me, etc. So I've never had that kind of person to look up to, which is why I've become really passionate about getting these role models out there. So me and a friend set up something called Islamic Makers. So it's about Muslims working in technology. It started really randomly. He literally tweeted me saying, hey, I have this idea, what's your email address? He literally sent me, so, you know, I want to create a community for Muslims working in tech, because he's a UX designer. And then literally our first event, I had like 30 or 40 people that came. And all of a sudden we were like, oh wow, there is something in this, you know? But anyways, with the whole Islamic Maker stuff, it's all about encouraging diversity in tech. people who say that Muslim women should limit their career paths maybe need to do a bit of history learning. You know, Khadija Ramianu, the Prophet's wife, you know, she was a businesswoman. Simply put, you can't top that, you know, and this was back in the days. So when you actually look into, I guess, the Muslim role models and people that we can look up to, they were really strong women who excelled in what they do. One nice thing about, for example, the technology industry is the flexibility. So say you're a Muslim mom or a Muslim woman and maybe you have a lot of household responsibilities. The tech industry allows you to work from home. That could be a marketing career, that could be a social media career, that could be coding. Sometimes, yes, we all have our barriers and we all have our limits, and you kind of just have to deal with it because those are the cards that you'll be dealt with in life. Saying that, however, it doesn't have to be that way. You can always find ways around it to fight against it. You shouldn't limit your aspirations. We all have a role to play in this world. And if what you do, you know, is a respectable career path and you enjoy what you do and you're bringing good to the world, then 100% go for it and do it. You know, as long as you're not bringing, you know, as long as you enjoy what you do.
Well, that's it for this episode. Next week, we discuss the implications of social media. With most of us on social media, do we really stop and think of the dangers involved? We will also be talking to Thinkuknow, an organisation that gives advice on how to stay safe on the internet. Find out about a new inspirational Sahabi.
Catch us again, same time, same place next week. Make sure you tweet us and let us know what you think of the show at Islam Channel #StepUp, or share your thoughts on any of the topics.
Until then, salams from all the team.
Assalamu alaikum.
And how Muslims will help. So Dwells.
I thought dwells was a real word.
Shelves.
Dells.
All the way from the top.